And now to Eddie Aruza and growing controversy over the Airbnb industry. Eddie.
Well, Phil, for those unfamiliar with Airbnb, it's a house-sharing website started in 2008, and it allows most anyone to turn their home into a hotel. Frequently, the rates are much lower than hotels, and it allows renters to find accommodations in parts of a city where there are few, if any, other options. But in cities all around the world, including here in Chicago, there's growing concern that the practice is getting out of control, perhaps even becoming dangerous, and that it needs to be regulated and taxed. And here to share their thoughts are Will Burns, Midwest Policy Director and Senior Advisor at Airbnb. Up until February of this year, Mr. Burns was alderman of Chicago's 4th Ward, serving a little over one term. Valerie Landis, Airbnb host on Chicago's near northwest side. She's also active in promoting the house-sharing program and getting more people into it. Alderman Michelle Smith of the 43rd Ward, which includes parts of Lincoln Park and Old Town. She supports an ordinance regulating house sharing that's currently being considered by the Chicago City Council. And Alderman Brian Hopkins of the neighboring 2nd Ward, which includes parts of the near north and west neighborhoods, including Wicker Park, Ukrainian Village, and the Gold Coast. He also supports regulation. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Valerie Landis, let me begin with you, because you just got into the Airbnb business last year. What led you to get into it, and how's it going?
Well, I had family that never came and visited me, so I sold my 1-bedroom and I bought a 2-bedroom. Really primarily for them to come visit me. I rehabbed the entire unit and went a little bit over budget. I also work for a startup company, so finances are tight, and stretching to a 2-bedroom was a bit of a financial push. So I started Airbnb. It was a turnkey situation where literally I didn't have to put any money into it.
And we're looking at some photos of your place right now.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing those.
Thanks, sure.
Go ahead.
And so it was a way for me to make extra income for that income loss of working for a startup company.
And so how's it been going since you started last July?
Great. I mean, I've literally booked July 2015 in an hour and have been booked ever since.
Can you share how much money or how much it's bringing into your economy there at
yeah,
this
it's definitely it varies, but you know, guests can pay anywhere between $100 to $200 a night for a 1-bedroom space. So they have their own bathroom, and then they have full access to the kitchen and right downtown.
Alderman Smith, you recently said that Airbnbs are possibly destroying Lincoln Park. How so?
Well, you know, in Lincoln Park we have a 2% vacancy rate. And there are well over 300 listings in one part of the zip code, so one part of the ward. So every time another person takes their house off, takes an apartment unit off the market and converts it into a vacation rental by an absentee owner investor, that's actually taking out space for people who want to live in Lincoln Park year-round. Now, this is a trend that's being replicated around the world. Paris recently outlawed non-owner-operated Airbnbs and requires you to own investment properties. Berlin has done the same thing. Austin, Texas has. All because sections of New Orleans are now converting from neighborhoods to tourist hoods. So unless we have regulation on the sheer numbers of these, we are at risk of having our neighborhoods shift from having long-term residents.
Well, Will Burns, the hotel industry released a report today, which I'm sure that you saw, about Airbnbs, and of course it was not very flattering about it. And it supports what Alderman Smith is saying, that the majority of the folks now operating Airbnbs are not like Valerie, but rather owners who aren't part of, who don't live there, that they buy a space and then they rent it out.
Well, I would expect the Hotel Association to produce a report that is friendly to the Hotel Association's position. In fact, they hired a researcher that's done this project for them in a number of other cities. We have some pushback points on that. The number of people who rent their unit longer than 100 days, it's in a single percentage. 82% of our hosts rent out their primary residence or a room in their primary residence. 40% of our hosts use the revenue that they're making in order to support their basic bills, their mortgages, property taxes, and the rest. So this notion that there are all these pirate hotels in the city of Chicago is erroneous. Where you're seeing the growth in Airbnb hosts, quite honestly, is on the south side of Chicago. The growth rate in the number of hosts we're getting on the south side is higher than you're finding anywhere else in the city. And what Airbnb guests do is they spend money that normally would not go to those neighborhoods in those neighborhoods.
Brian Hopkins, your colleague Joe Moreno of the First Ward, Alderman Moreno, recently wrote in the Sun-Times in an op-ed that he opposes any kind of regulation that is before City Council right now because he says that Airbnbs bring not only visitors to communities that otherwise would not visit them, but they bring in revenue that wouldn't be coming into those communities. What's your thought on it?
Well, and I share part of Wicker Park with Alderman Moreno, and when I read that, I thought, you know, the Airbnbs in my section of Wicker Park clearly aren't the same in his, because I get complaints. I get people calling me about the loud, raucous party that was at an Airbnb unit next door to them or down the block from them. Those are the problems that we're dealing with right now. Obviously, Valerie is a responsible operator, and I commend you for it. We're not here to talk about the people who run their business the way you do. We're here to talk about the unlicensed renegade operators that are out there causing problems in the neighborhood. That's what we have to respond to, and that's what we have to deal with.
But Alderman Smith, there is an ordinance in Chicago already, passed in 2011, that extends regulations to Airbnb rentals that would prevent such things.
Well,
why isn't that being enforced?
Well, I would say, first and foremost, Airbnb doesn't let people know that they're licensed. I'm sure that when our guest here signed up, she probably didn't even know she needed a license in the zoning area that she's in. Because Airbnb, when they solicit you, and I've gotten that solicitation myself, doesn't say license required. For a coupon that you get at the grocery store, there is a paragraph of disclaimers. But to become on Airbnb, you have to do an awful lot of searching yourself to find out if you have to